Welcome back to my channel, and welcome back to this lesson about John Milton and Paradise Lost. I have divided this into two videos. In my previous video we talked about John Milton as a man, we talked about his biography, his work, about the importance of the political and historical background in his life, because actually he was a very very strong Republican, anti-monarchist, and he fought with the Puritans. He worked for Cromwell during the Commonwealth, and he had to face many dangers and also imprisonment when the monarchy was restored with with Charles II, Stuart. So basically we tried to summarize, to understand the reasons beneath his works, and why he uses such metaphors. We will talk about them today in Paradise Lost, that have a very strong connection with the political issues of the time. We also talked about the other works he wrote and the different periods in his life, and we specifically focused on the last period, the third period, so the last period of his life too, from 1660 to 1674, when he died actually in London. And we said that this last period was the most creative, and it was the period when he wrote Paradise Lost and Paradise Regained. It was the period of the Restoration, and he wrote his masterpieces, basically. These works are typical of the 17th century, and we can recognize there his very classical education, basically, and also the ideals of humanism. We also talked about his strong faith. In fact, as I told in my last video, he joined the Anglican Church, so the Protestant church. But above all, as I said before, in this work, in Paradise Lost, obviously the content is absolutely connected with the Bible, but actually the metaphors are really connected also to the to history and to the political events of the time. I want to remember that he was the greatest of the Puritan writers. So, as far as the form, is concerned, as I said before in my last video, this is definitely the form of a classic literature, epic or tragedy, while the content, as I said before, is connected to the Bible, so basically to the Christian religion. We also mentioned how Milton influenced literature after him, especially poets in the 18th century, who called him a great master of artificial style. Artificial style refers to his language especially, which is a very high and complex language, very connected to Latin, to Italian, with very long sentences, a lot of subordinate clauses, and he uses a lot of references to Latin structures, and he uses the blank verse. Let's remember that in the blank verse we find also an attitude to condensate, basically, to condensate the verse, eliminating those words which are not extremely important, which don't actually carry an important weight within the sentence. He uses the importance of the adjective or the adverbs is really striking, and he uses a lot of relative clauses, which are also very important as far as the syntax is concerned. Now we'll try to get into details here while talking about Paradise Lost. And in order to do so, we're going also to read a part concerning the angel's fall. And we'll try to analyze and to understand what we mean while talking about semantics, while talking about Saturn as a hero, while talking about the metaphors he uses for actually expressing political hopes or disillusionment. Sorry. Let's remember that actually Milton would have liked to write something about King Arthur at first, but then we can say that his political activity with Cromwell and the Restoration prevented him to do so, from doing so, and so then after Restoration he decided to change and to use to write about greater themes actually. Obviously the Paradise Lost, the main theme could be considered the original sin. And obviously the reference is in the book of Genesis. But actually Adam's fall is just a sort of a minor episode in a sort of a major scheme, which is more about the ways of God to man. The result is a very complex work that isn't religious, it's not a theological work at all. I want to quote something that Deiches told about that work, which is, I think it's a great definition. He talks about this work saying that it is the synthesis of all that the Western mind was stored with by the middle of the 17th century. This is what Deiches said. So basically, this work is a sort of a web of references. It's a sort of, we can say, a cultural resume of everything that actually had influenced the mind and culture until the 17th century. And so the references, also cultural and literary references, are really different from one another. There's a variety of references from Homer to the Bible, from Dante to Virgil, from Tasso to Ariosto or Spencer, talking about obviously English literature. And the tones are also very different from one another. So we can say that themes are biblical, obviously, but there are also many classical elements, medieval elements, or elements concerning Renaissance or humanism, and so new perspectives. So that was obviously a very complex work to analyze. It is a very complex work to analyze, actually. The plot is actually quite simple after all. It's about Satan that after being thrown from heaven to hell with his rebel angels, tempts Adam and Eve, okay, both of them actually, in guise of a serpent, of a snake. They repent eventually, but they are driven from paradise anyway to the world, basically, accompanied by Archangel Michael. And they can have the chance to see something about the future, about the future of the human race, and they find some relief. They are somehow comforted by the idea of the Messiah, the arrival of the Messiah, and the possible redemption. But the Garden of Eden is anyway lost. It's paradise lost. So this is a human drama, but actually the protagonist isn't human, because the protagonist is definitely Satan here, and this is something completely new and absolutely not conventional. Now, talking about Saturn, I also mentioned that aspect in my last video. He is he's described as a sort of heroic rebel. heroic rebel that fights for his cause, for his ideals, against a sovereign, okay, almighty. And so it represents Milton's anti-monarchist ideals, so his fight against royal despotism. This is obviously a political and a historical, very strong metaphor. So basically there is a chronological time, okay, it talks about 2 days when God fights against his son, Lucifer, and then there is the fall of Satan, Lucifer, with his other angels, other rebel angels, and it lasts 9 days, and another 9 days where he is in this region, in this place of fire and ice. Now, what is especially interesting is, first of all, the difference between what Milton describes and what Dante describes in Divina Commedia. Because Dante gives us a very, very well planned structure of the hell, okay, the whole cosmology of, I mean, Dante's idea of paradise and purgatory and hell. It is very well structured, it's almost scientific. In this case, Milton talks about a very chaotic situation, okay, so it's completely different. And in this case, in Paradise Lost, Satan somehow reacts, okay, to his situation of being lost in this place of eternal pain with fiery words, okay, with pride, with strength. And we will read that passage then. One verse, one line is especially, it's very, very important when he says, okay, I read that, better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. That is the whole point. That is the whole point. This is what actually characterizes Satan. So it is better to be free and to reign, okay, in a place where you can be free, instead of being submitted to someone, okay, submitted to despotism. He's talking about God's despotism, but Milton is talking about the despotism of the Restoration, of the monarchy. Now, he is a sort of a traditional heroic leader, Satan, and he tries to struggle in defense of his cause, after all, like a sort of proud rebel who would never submit, basically. Also, the words that Milton chooses in order to talk about hell change. They change a lot. At first he's talking about affliction, about dismay, about lasting pain, and then he starts talking about dungeon, he starts talking about furnace, about prison with a capital letter. So that prison is the prison that Milton had to experience after the Restoration because of his support concerning Charles I's execution, okay, and that prison deserves a capital letter because this is the prison that he had earned with his dignity and his being active while fighting for something he believed in. Now, Milton also uses all our senses to describe that place, to give us a very complete description of the place of hell. He talks about something we can see, so with sight, something we can smell, something we can feel, or other angels can feel. So the description is quite compelling, it's involving us. Now let's try and read together a few verses, a few lines that actually gives us the idea of how hell is described and how Satan reacts to that hell. 9 times the space that measures day and night to mortal man, he with his horrid crew lay vanquished, rolling in the fiery gulf, confounded though immortal. But his doom reserved him to more wrath, for now he thought both of lost happiness and lasting pain torments him. Round he throws his baleful eyes, that witnessed huge affliction and dismay, mixed with obdurate pride and steadfast hate. Now, at first we are talking about that chronological time I mentioned before, so 9 times the space measures day and night, so 9 days is the time that Saturn spends there. With his horrid crew, so the other lost angels, basically. He is vanquished, so he has lost, and he is in this terrible place, full of fire. He's confused, but he is immortal. Immortality, in this case, is a curse, obviously. Immortality itself could be a positive thing, but when we are talking about immortality in a place where there is everlasting pain, this is obviously a curse. So he realizes that curse now. He is experiencing now the wrath. When we talk about wrath here, we are talking about divine rage, against him because of his his rebellious acts. And now he's tormented by the lasting pain. So as I said before, it is an eternal pain, and also he's also tormented by the idea of what he has lost, because his decision condemned him to pain, but he has lost something great before, which was heaven. Then he looks around and everything he sees is pain, affliction, dismay, but at the same time, there is not a sense of an idea of loss, but of pride on one side and hate on the other one. At once, as far as angels can, he views the dismal situation, waste and wild, a dungeon horrible on all sides round, as one great furnace flamed, yet from those flames no light, but rather darkness visible served only to discover sights of woe, regions of sorrow, doleful shades, where peace and rest can never duel. Hope never comes that comes to all, but torture without end still urges, and fiery deluge, fed with ever-burning sulfur unconsumed. This is a horrible scenario. In fact, everything angels can see all around, is this gloomy situation, this waste and wild because it is chaotic, as I said before. There's no order, This is something completely wild, completely chaotic, no order. Order is something that reassures us somehow, Nothing here is reassuring. It is a dungeon. This is the first time in which we find this word. As I said before, there is this shift, Before we were talking about dismay, loss in pain, affliction. Now we are starting to talk about dungeons, so a place where they are confined, they are closed up because of something they were found guilty of. Dungeon has a capital letter. You see that? It's capital letter because that dungeon deserves a capital letters, because it is something that came from a decision they made, So there is dignity in that dungeon, after all. Horrible, anyway, on all sides round. There's one great furnace. It's the first time we talk about the fire here. And, well, the only positive thing of fire could be that there is light all around it. No, fire means also light. No, in this case there isn't. So fire is just a curse, a punishment, but from those flames, no light. So it gives no light, and this is no relief, because light is also reassuring. No, it is dark, but even in the darkness you can see what you need to see to be scared to death. And so what do you see here? Sights of woe, regions of sorrows, pain, doleful shades, so souls that are suffering, where peace and rest can never duel. So you cannot hope that peace or rest can arrive. Hope never comes. Okay, torture is an endless torture. It's endless pain. And a fiery deluge. The deluge is another biblical image, okay, typical image. The deluge was sent to punish humanity, okay, and Noah saved animals, and we know. But in this case, the deluge is used to punish angels, and we start using other senses here, because there is something we saw, or Satan actually saw, okay, so pain, other souls who suffered, something that the angel could feel, so sorrow, woe, and there is something they can smell, because this deluge is fed with ever-burning sulfur. Sulfur, well, we know this is something that in the common imagery belongs to hell, basically, okay, to the devil. Such place eternal justice had prepared for those rebellious, here their prison ordained in utter darkness, and their portion set as far removed from God and the light of heaven as from the center thrice to the utmost pole. Oh, how unlike the place from whence they fell! Now there's the comparison between hell and heaven. Such place, so this place, hell, was the place determined, created by the eternal justice. Before we talked about wrath, you remember, so the rage, divine rage. Now we're talking about eternal justice, okay? So this is something more, it is also used with capital letters here. And then they talk about their prison, okay? So there is guilt, and they are paying for that guilt, okay, that was decided by the eternal justice. So there is a change, okay, in the way the way this punishment is concerned, is intended now. In darkness, okay, away from God, away from the light of heaven, okay. So far away. Now he is using a Ptolemaic reference, okay, using a Ptolemaic reference in which the earth was in the center of the universe, and the heaven or sky was above, and hell was beneath, okay. And so in order to say that they are completely far away, okay, from God, from heaven, as far as the heaven is from hell in the Ptolemaic scheme, we can say so. And now Satan starts to talk, and he talks with very proud and fiery words. Is this the region, the soil? Is this, by the way, region and soil and climb, all with capital letters. So we are trying to give now dignity to the place, to hell. Is this the region, this the soil, the climb, said the lost archangel, this the seat that we must change for heaven, this mournful gloom for that celestial light? Be it so, since he who now is sovereign can dispose and bid what shall be right. Farthest from him is best, whom reason hath equalled, force hath made supreme above his equals. Now, moment here. He's talking. So he's asking, he's wondering, he's asking himself and the others. So this place here, so dark and mournful gloom, so it's gloomy, but it's not just gloomy, that darkness is compared to death, mournfulness. So this is the place that God, okay, has prepared for us, basically. That he, that personal pronoun he, has also a capital letter, as well as sovereign, okay, which are both referring to God. But if you go back to the second line, the same personal pronoun, he, referred to Satan, didn't have a capital letter. Now, this is the place that God basically has prepared for us. And this is the place we must take now, while before we could actually enjoy the celestial light. So it is absolutely the opposite here. Well, if it is so, so be it. There's much dignity in this statement. We shall be right. Okay. Farthest from him is best. Okay. So it is absolutely better to be away from him, since he is the one who wants to dominate on everyone else. So it is the best thing ever is to be away from him, because he actually represents despotism. Divine despotism here, but it is the representation of royal despotism actually. Farewell, happy fields, where joy forever jewels. Hail horrors, hail infernal world, and thou, profoundest hell, receive thy new possessor, one who brings a mind not to be changed by place or time. So in this moment, now he is saying goodbye, okay, to everything he had experienced before, okay, the eternal grace, heaven. He's saying goodbye, and he is receiving, he's saying hi, hail horrors, hail infernal world, to the worst thing that could ever happen. But he is receiving that with a proud attitude and with no nostalgic feelings, and there is no regretting what happened actually. And you can notice here that happy fields has a capital letter because it's referring to heaven, but also infernal world has a capital letters because now this is also a place of dignity, the place he is receiving, and he is making himself king of this new reality. And in fact he says, and now referring to the hell, profoundest hell, capital letter again, and he says, receive thy new possessor. So receive me, okay, accept me as your new sovereign, his new king, okay, a king, a possessor, not really a king who wants to dominate on others, so there is no despotism in this, but just a kind of a possession, okay, and he is now accepting all of this, accepting his own role, and putting the hand at the head, of this place, his own mind, and a mind that will not change, okay. It's not something that will change by place or time, he says. So there's a sort of a stability, okay, for this place that was total chaos, and now he's receiving a head, okay, owner, and a stable owner somehow. And now a very important line. The mind is its own place, and in itself can make heaven of hell, the hell of heaven. This is extremely important. So depending on the mind, on human mind, okay, depending on it, depending on the perspective, depending on the reason why things are done, then also heaven can become hell, and the other way around. Okay, so it is hell if I am in heaven but I am submitted to someone and I'm not free. Okay, it could be heaven if I am in hell but I can reign and be my own master. So this is very, very, very emblematic. Can make heaven of hell, hell of heaven. So the two entities are not divided anymore. They don't. They can't. Obviously, they can't coexist, but they can change into one and into each other, basically. What matter where, if I be still the same, and what if I should be all but less than he whom thunder hath made greater? Here at least we shall be free. That's the point. The Almighty hath not built here for his envy, will not drive us hence. Here we may reign secure, and in my choice to reign is worth ambition, though in hell. Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. And we're back to the line I read before, which basically contains the whole meaning of this piece here. Now, basically what he's saying here is that I will always be the same, so I will be stable. This is what he said before. He would never change his mind, so he is strong in his intention, in his cause. And and then he refers to God, basically, that he with capital letter is referred to God, and he's comparing himself to God now. And he says that in this place he can finally be free. The angels can finally be free, and this is what makes hell a possible future heaven. Because it is always a hell if you are submitted to someone, even if you are in heaven. And the Almighty, so God, basically, Almighty with capital letter again, hath no built here for his envy, will not drive us hence. This is very important, okay? It wasn't the purpose of God. Here we may reign secure. This is a quite interesting choice of words. So at first we had the idea of this plane. It was very chaotic, place of dismay, so it was everything but secure. Then we have a second moment in which we have a sort of an idea of a prison. So it is obviously a place where you are confined. And now he is talking about somewhere where he can reign secure, so safe, a sort of a safe place. This is his way of changing hell into heaven, just using words. The words that define the place can actually change the exception we have of that place, the idea we have of that place. And in my choice, so this is again the will, okay, the personal will, the free will, if we want to use, okay, a word that belongs to religion. In my choice, to reign is worth ambition. This is important because he is rejecting his rebellion against God. His ambition is a Prometheic, okay, it's like Prometheus. That sort of ambition can be defined hubris, okay, so overconfidence somehow. This is ambition, okay, and reign is worth ambition. Though in hell, even if it happens in hell, so it is better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven. And we are back. This is basically the resume of the whole meaning of Satan's words here. Now, this is a very strong idea of this strange, heroic, epic figure that will actually influence poetry, as I said before, especially romantic poetry. Let's think for a moment of the Byronic hero. Okay, so strong in his self-consciousness, self-determination, independent, absolutely unconventional. So this is extreme and sometimes even mysterious and a little bit gloomy. Yes, there is a lot in common actually. In general, we can say that romantic heroes have these characteristics, not just in talking about English romanticism, but also Sturm und Drang in Germany, for example, German romanticism in general. Let's think about Goethe, for example. Let's think about Faust, or Prometheus, also in his case. So there are a lot actually of figures, especially concerning poetry, that are or that display the same attitude, okay, towards life, towards God, towards creation, towards nature, towards the fate of the human being. It is also true that Satan will not keep this attitude during the whole work. Quite on the contrary, in fact, he loses his sort of a dramatic heroism when he changed himself into a guileful serpent, snake, to lead Eve and Adam into temptation. So in that case, he loses this characteristic, okay, of heroism. But anyway, the titanism of his character basically remains as a strong example of passion. Passion that will not have an ethical and moral characteristic, a moral feature, especially during Romanticism, in literature in general. So he's actually an example of a passion in constant conflict with reason. Reason is God on the other side, is heaven, is the rightful choice, okay, is the rational choice. He's also a champion of individualism, which is also one of the characteristics of Romanticism, but not only, okay, not only. Obviously, Enlightenment and Romanticism will create a fight, okay, a dualism between reason on one side and feeling on the other side, or instinct better on the other side. And so this sort of individualism is quite important in both these two movements, basically, and the dualism, reason on one side, instinct on the other side, is always present also in arts, in literature in general. Obviously, he is also the advocate of freedom, and also in this case, freedom, as I said before, is a characteristic of Romantic poetry. It is also characteristic of Enlightenment, if we think about that, because reason was considered to be free, and every single man had to be free, because because humanity, or every man was, or better, all men should be considered as equals, because they had this specific peculiar feature that was reason. Okay, so reason made all of them equals, and so all of them free. That was another point of view. Then during Romanticism it changes completely, and freedom is a characteristic of the individual, it is a characteristic of the hero, it is a characteristic of the poet, for example. Of Prometheus, and we are back to mythology, okay, because basically Prometheus is a myth, a symbol that we can recognize in every single period of literature and philosophy, and sometimes it is seen as an example, sometimes it is seen as a sort of a symbol of sin or guilt. For sure, considering the period when Milton wrote, this attitude, Satan's attitude, Satan's Titanism, was certainly a symbol of the Puritan spirit, and that fight against monarchy and the fight against despotism, and fight for a very specific cause of freedom. Well, there should be so much more to say about this incredible work, which is a never-ending source of inspiration and an incredible web of references and a great source of knowledge. But anyway, I hope that I gave you a glimpse, and I hope that a few themes are quite clear, and I like this kind of video where I have the chance to read something, because it is much more effective, I think, if you can enjoy directly what an author wrote. Thank you so very much for following, and see you again very soon. Bye!